Welcome to Basic Weaving 101. We are going to start our textile lessons with the different kinds of weaves. Weaving is the craft or action of forming fabric by interlacing threads. Before we actually get to weaving fabric, we're going to practice our 3 basic weaving techniques, and we're going to do that with the paper strips you prepped earlier this week. Supplies you're going to need are your weaving paper to put your textiles on, some normal school glue, a pair of paper scissors. Please don't use your sewing shears. And you're going to need all of the strips that you pre-cut. The first thing you're going to want to do is go through and see if there are any bad or unusual pieces in your weave, in your strips. I can pick out these 2 right here. They're significantly skinnier than the rest of them. That's going to mess up our weave. So I'm just going to chuck those and get rid of them. Next, I'm going to take my strips. I'm going to even them out on one side. And I am going to cut them in half. Now you can do this by measuring. You can fold them in half and cut them at the fold. Use a ruler, eyeball it. It's up to you, but you do want them basically put in half. Pretty close. Once you have cut all of your pieces, you are going to want to choose one color to be your threads that will go up and down. The up and down threads are called your warp yarns. I'm going to choose light pink to be my warping yarns. And so what I'm going to do is take my school glue and I'm going to come right here where it says glue paper strips here. I'm going to put a little bit of glue. Don't put too much, otherwise your paper will just get all goopy. And I am simply going to start bringing them in like this and laying them down. Now, when I add my second piece, oh, wait, I want to go back and actually straighten out my first piece. I laid it down kind of crooked. When I lay down my second piece, I'm going to put it in the same spot, but I want to leave the teeniest, tiniest amount of space. The teeniest, tiniest amount of space. That teeny, tiny space is in the sewing world called a skosh. A skosh of space, the teeniest, tiniest. Now, please don't allow your spaces to be this large. This is too big. It will ruin your weave. Just leave that skosh. Oh, I found another skinny piece. I'm going to get rid of that. And you're going to go all the way across, making sure that your pieces are straight. If they're a little crooked, straighten them out at the bottom. Make sure that you only have a skosh of space in between your strips. I moved this guy, so I'm going to scooch him back in. Now, the top up here, if your pieces are cut a little crooked, this top part is less important than this open space here. So if it is not lined up perfectly up here, it's quite all right. And I think that that is pretty close to the end. Maybe if I add just a tiny drip more of glue, I can add in one more strip. Another skinny one I'm going to throw out. All right, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to check them. I see a skosh of space right in between every single one of them. I'm going to make sure these are set down real good and solid. And now you are going to need to let this piece dry. All right, so that's going to take a minute. If you would like to get a piece of Scotch tape and place it over the top while that dries, you may be able to pull that Scotch tape off. But if you want to give that a try, you certainly can. It's not a requirement. You can just let this dry while you go through and fill out the form over here. You're going to be defining what a plain weave is. You can look that up. And what types of fabric would a plain weave textile be made with? Well, you're going to find that in the assignment when you read the article Fabric Weaves 20 Important Types, written by Serena Terrig. That is embedded in the assignment, and you're going to want to go ahead and read that, and you can fill this information out. I'm going to set this aside to let it dry for just a minute. And with the magic of video, I have another one right here that's all dry or mostly dry and ready to go. Now, a plain weave is what our most basic shirts are made out of. And basically, that means that our sideways pieces that are going through, which are called the weft strand. So your up and down pieces are called the warp strand, and the sideways pieces are called the weft strand. For myself, I find it a little easier to go this way. I am going to insert my weft strands going this direction. So actually, I think I'm going to do it upside down. I'll probably move it all around and do it a whole bunch of different ways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over one piece, under the next, over one piece, under the next, over one piece, under the next, and you repeat over, under, over, under, over, and under. Now you can see that this side over here is where you are going to end up gluing down your ends. So I'm going to go ahead and scooch this over like this so I'm all ready to go at the end. I'm not going to glue it down yet because I'm going to end up having to kind of fiddle with this and it's going to shift around. But what I am going to do is take my strip and I'm going to scooch it all the way up here because this up here is where my pieces are glued down to my paper. So with just a gentle amount of pressure, I can scooch this all the way up to where my glued down pieces are, right? So you're going to scooch that. Now the second one I'm going to do, I'm going to come in and I'm going to go over, under again, except I'm going to do it in an opposite format from the first one I did. So this one I did over, under, and so on. But this one, I'm going to do opposite. So I'm going to go under, over, whoops, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, right? Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to scooch these ones up. So now as you're trying to scooch this, you can probably see why I told you that you wanted to leave just a scotch of space in between because it makes space for this thread that's coming through. I'm going to pull this up as tightly as I can. And you can see I'm pushing at each thread that I can pass by. And I'm going to go ahead and pull it through just a little bit so it's even on this side, just to make it neat. Ooh, in doing that, I moved my threads around. So now I'm going to scooch it back up again. There we go. Now you'll see just even in this first row, there are these little tiny circles right here. This space right here is part of the porosity. So what that means is with this particular weave, you will have a little bit of air space in between each of the fibers moving in and out. That's called your porosity. The porosity on a plain weave is about moderate. It's kind of middle road. The little spaces in between are not too big, they're not too small. It really is going to depend on the type of fibers that you're using. So now moving on, I'm going to go ahead and grab a new fiber and I'm going to go back. I'm going to do the opposite again. So I'm going to follow what I did in the first row and I'm going to go over. So I'm going to go oop, over, under. There we go. Over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, whoops, over, and under. There we go. All right. And you're going to follow this same process all the way down. Your finished square should be approximately 3 inches by 3 inches by the time you are done. You're going to want to get as many pieces of your weft fibers in as possible. Remember, you are trying to scooch them up. So your porosity is as small as it can be. Again, I'm not too worried about this side. What we're really looking for over here is to make sure that your weave is good and sound. Here's what it looks like facing down. And now you're going to go through and finish this. And then I will see you back in video part 2 when we come back, see what this looks like at the end, and we will tackle the next one down, which is called the satin weave. Oh, with the magic of editing, we have returned and are going to move on to our satin stitch magically as well. All of our warping strands have been placed. A skosh of space has been left in between them, and I am ready to go on a satin stitch. Excuse me, a satin weave. Now, the satin weave we're going to do is called a 4-strand satin. And what that means is instead of going over, under, over, under, over, under, as we did in the plain weave, we are going to go over, under, but we're going to change and not go over, under every single warping strand. Using our weft strand, we're going to go over some of the warping strands, but not all of them. So again, I'm going to turn this upside down because it's a little easier for me to go ahead and slide everything in. Now, I'm going to go over, I'm going to start it by using the number 4. I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, and now I'm going to go under the next one. I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, and under the next one. And I'm going to go over 1, 2, and I ran out, but it would finish with 3, 4. So this is my first strand here. What I have done is I have gone over 4 threads, under 1 to hold it in place, over 4 threads, under 1 to hold it in place, and over the 4 threads, even though I have run out here. So now the next one I need to do, because I am off on counts, right? I'm not going over, under, over, under. I have to change my number so I can actually have my wefting yarns stay in place. So the way we're going to do this is we're actually now going to cheat a little bit and we're going to go over 3. So I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3. And this is just to start my line. I'm going to go under the next one. And now I'm going to go back over 4 again because that is our goal. Going over 4 of the warps is our goal each time. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to go under this one. And now here at the end, I'm able to go over 3 of them. Now, as you can see, when I scooch this together, what that's going to do is give me this diagonal line of my warping yarns. And by going under this warping yarn here and changing my starting count, it's only the starting count I'm changing. By changing that, it's going to allow me to lock my previous thread or my yarn into place, and it's not going to fall out. So now I'm going to grab the next one, and I'm going to go down one more number again. So I'm going to go over 2. And then again, 4 is my magic number. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to go under the next one. And now I'm able to go over 4 here at my end. I'm scooching that into place. And now my last one in my set is I'm going to go down, you guessed it, I'm going to go over 1 and under the next, and then number 4 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and under 1. And I'm going to go under 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to go under the last one now. And this is the first set of my satin weave. Trying to pull that over again. Now, the reason this is called a 4-strand satin weave is for 2 reasons. We are mainly going over 4 strands. I know it seems a little weird here, but we have to start somewhere, right? We can't go over 4 for every single thread because then all of our threads would just fall out. We have to be able to lock them into place. So it's just our starters here. But all the rest of them, if you can imagine our fabric continuing on, all of these would have gone over 4 as well, right? And then we would have started going under on that single, just like we did here. So we're going over 4. That is the first 4-strand that we're looking at. But also we're doing a repeating pattern set, and we've gone 4 threads or 4 wefting yarns down. And now we're going to repeat this pattern, and we're going to go back to doing number 4 again. Now, that can get a little bit confusing to me when I'm weaving. Am I going 4 across to start? Am I going 3 across to start? Am I going 2? What am I doing? So what I did, if you can't see it, is I actually wrote a little note right here, a little number that tells me how many my first starter stitches. On this one's a number 4, under this one a 3, a 2, and a 1. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to mark these again, just because it helps my brain out. So here's going to be a number 4. I know I'm going to go 4 here. Here's a number 3. I'm going to go over 3. Here's a 2. And here's a 1. And I'm just going to actually repeat my pattern or my set because I'm going to keep going. So 4, 3, 2, and 1. Look, I'm going to have a perfect finish right there. So I'll be able to get in 3 total sets to this weave. And let me flip it around. And I'm going to go ahead and do it again. So as I did on my first line of my set, I'm going to go over 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going under this one. And you can see it's a copy of my first line here. So I'm going over 4 here. And I'm going to copy my very first wefting strand. There we go. Now I'm going to go over 3. 1, 2, 3, and here's my next one. 1, 2, 3, 4, because that's my total number I want is 4. 4 is my magical number. And now I've got my little number note here, so I'm going to go over 2 because that's just my starter. And here it is. I'm copying this wefting strand right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to go under this one. And this is the one where I get to finish going over 4. And I'm scooching in. I only want to skosh between them because I really want my porosity, that space in between. I don't want it to be too big. And lastly, I've got my note here. I am going to go over just 1. And now 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's my 5th one. And this one, I go under the last one. Okay, and scooching that down. So now you can see this pattern has repeated itself. And I have got 2 full sets down. And I have got a really nice little angle pattern happening over here. And my porosity here, the holes in between, is pretty low. And that's because with these strands that are floating across my weft strands, excuse me, my weft strands are floating over the warp. It allows me to take my warp strands and really scooch them in. I can scooch them in much, much tighter than I could with my plain weave. My plain weave, I would only be able to scooch them in so far and then they would get stuck. But on my satin, I can really push those in. So let's go back and finish our set. And now I'm on repeat and I have my little notes here. So I'm going to go over 4 and under 1, over 4 and under 1. That one is stuck. There we go. Just double counting. I felt like it was not correct. So now, according to my note, I'm going over 3. And now I know I go over 4. 4 is always my goal. 1, 2, 3, 4. And down. And according to my notes, I'm going over 2 now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Under. And over 4. That is my full repeat. And then lastly, I get to do one more. I'm going to go under 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, under 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, and under 1. And then I would be going over 1, 2, 3, 4 if my fabric was continuing. All right. So here is my satin pattern. Now, the satin pattern, again, the porosity, that space in between, is pretty small because I can scooch my wefting yarns up. The unraveling, though, is very, very high because I have so many strands here that are left loose. You can see I could actually take this warping yarn, the paper, it just by itself, it just wants to scooch right out. I'm definitely going to have to glue that down or just my weave on paper is going to fall apart. So imagine what that would be like with fabric. Um, the strength of this is pretty high. It's a nice durable fabric, but it is a little fragile. Because I have all of these floating threads that go across the top, I can come in if this were fabric and I could very easily nick this with my fingers. I could nick it on a needle or a pin. I could nick it even if I ran up against a wall. And you can actually pull these because of these floating threads not being held down into place, and it could create a snag in your fabric. So while the fabric itself is overall very durable, the top layer of it with these floating weft threads is a little bit fragile. So now let's go ahead and finish this one up. I'm going to go ahead and trim up these edges. This is just like what I did here to finish off the plain weave. I'm just going to come in with my scissors, if I can, and I'm just going to cut these guys off like this. Scooch them out of my way. I'm going to do the same thing down here. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and lift up this side gently, because again, it does like to unravel. And I'm going to go ahead and put my glue down over here for my wefting yarns so I can stick them on. And I'm going to give that a few minutes to dry. I think because this is so easy to snag, I think I'm going to glue down my last warping yarn to hold into place. Otherwise, I'm afraid everything is just going to fall apart, honestly. So I think I'm going to go ahead and put some glue down in this corner down here to hold it in. Lost one. There we go. Kind of spread it around a little bit. We'll share it. And now I've kind of got this whole corner glued down, and that should stay pretty secure as far as losing any of my strands over here. Get all these down. And there you go. Here is your satin weave. Welcome back. And through the magic of editing, we have started our twill weave by posting all of our warping threads going down. They are glued and secure into place. So the next one we're working on now, as I mentioned, was our twill weaves. Now this one is similar to a plain weave in that we're going over, under, but it's a little different and runs a little bit like the satin stitch because we're going over, under 2 warping threads at a time. And in order to get our locking in, like we had to with our satin weave here, we have to start our line with a different count. So to make this an easier start for you, what I've got is kind of a key on how you're going to start each row. If you look back into your assignment, the one that we are creating is called the Twill 2x2 herringbone. And that diagram is what I'm referring to here. So our first line, and again, we have 3 sets of 4 that we're going to be able to do in the square that we have. So our first set, we are going to start our weave by going over 2, and then we'll continue on our over under pattern. But the next line, I'm going to start with over 1, and then we're going to continue on our over under 2 pattern. The next one, I'm going to start under 2 and continue on with our over under 2 at a time. And then again, I'm going to go under 1 and continue with our over under 2 at a time. Now this pattern here on mine, the way I have my spacing going, it will repeat 3 times, just like it did on my satin. So what I've done is I've pre-marked for myself right here this exact thing, over 2, over 1, under 2, under 1, and I have that written down here on repeat, and let's get to it. I'll leave this here so you can see what I'm doing. All right, so I am going to go over 2, under 2, over 2, whoop, under 2, over 2, under 2. There's my first line, just like the plain weave. Now I'm going to scooch this up. So my porosity in this weave is pretty high. That means my spacing is pretty high. Over, under, over, under, over, under. Great. So now I'm going to come back with my next one. Now, because I'm just starting, it's just my starting point. My goal is to go over, under 2 at a time. But I have to lock this one in, which is why I have this unusual starting pattern. So I'm going to follow my notes, and I am going to now go over 1, and then I'm going to continue on my pattern, under 2, over 2, under 2, over 2, under 2, and over 2. Oops. And then my last one is over 2. Now, I only have 1 strand here. I've run out. But if my fabric or my warping threads continued, I would be going over 2, under 2, over 2, under 2, and so on. So I'm going to scooch this up. Get that in there. Okay. Now I'm going to take my next one. Now, again, I have to lock this one in too, right? So now the next on my pattern is I'm actually going to start under 2 and then go over 2, under 2, and so on. So I'm going to go under 2, over 2, under 2, over 2. Got stuck. There it is. Over 2, under 2, and over 2. And you can see this really cool diagonal that I'm getting in here now, right? Okay. So now the last one in my set, because I have 4 strands of weft yarn in my set, and then my set repeats, right? So now I'm going to go under 1. So I'm going to go under 1, and now I repeat going over under 2s. So over 2, under 2, over 2, under under 2, over 2, and under 2. If my fabric were longer, I'd be going under 2, and I would repeat that. Scooch this guy in. All right. And now this set repeats. I'm going to do it again. So just like this one, I'm going to go over 2, under 2, over 2, under 2, over 2, and under 2. Scooch it up as tight as I can get it. Now in my repeat, I'm going to go over 1, and then I'm going to start my under 2, over 2, under 2, over 2, under 2, and over. It would be 2 if my pieces were longer. Get that in and tight. And now I'm going to starting with my unders now. So I'm going to go under 2, over 2, under 2, over 2, under 2, and over 2. Okay. Scooch that in there. And then my last one, under 1. So under 1, but now repeat my 2s. So over 2, under 2, over 2, under 2, over 2, and under the last ones, which is under 2. Okay, I'm going to scooch this up. You can see the little holes in between. That's that empty negative space that allows air to move back through your porosity, how porous that shape is. So now I've got my 2 sets in. I'm going to go back in now, and I'm going to go and repeat. I have one more that I get to do, and I'm going to start just like this first one, just like the beginning of the second set. I'm going to go over 2, under 2, over 2, under 2, over 2, under 2. Simple. That's the easiest one for sure. Oh, okay, look. I have an error here somehow. Let's figure out. I know that I have an error here because see how these line up? These are not correct. Based on this patterning here, I should not have these in a row. So I'm going to have to take this out. Let's see what happened. So my last one, I was supposed to go under 1, over 2, under 2, over, oh, there's my mistake right there. I only went over 1 and I was supposed to go over 2. So let's kind of scooch this one out, and I'm going to try and give that a repair. So I've got 2, 2. Let's do this again. We're going to go 2, 2, 2. Let's see, 2, 2. Try not to bend my paper. There. Now let me double check. So I've gone under 1, and then I've got 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and I would have 2 if my fabric were longer. Okay, I think this is okay now. So I'm going to go back because I'm at my last set, right? So I'm going to go over 2, over 2, under 2, over 2. That one bends funny. That's why I did that last time. Under 2, over 2, and under 2. Okay. Now let's see if I'm continuing on the pattern that I'm creating. Yes, that looks much better. Based on this pattern, I should never have 2 in a row that are identical. All right. Now I'm on to this one. So I'm going over 1 to start, and then I go under 2, over 2, under 2, over 2, under 2, and over 2 if I had more fabric. Now I'm at the third one in my line. So I'm going under 2, over 2, under 2, over 2, under 2, over 2, under 2, and over 2. I confused myself on that one. I had to say it again. Okay. And I just have enough space to get one more row in to finish my set. So I'm going to do that. So now on this one, I know I'm starting off by going under 1, and then I'm going to go into my 2s. So under 1, and now here I go again. There's over 2, under 2. There it is, over 2, under 2, over 2, and under 2 if I, again, had more space. All right, and I can double check it by making sure that my patterning is correct, and it looks like it is. So there we go. I can move my notes now. Here is your twill weave. Look at how cool that is. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut off my excess so I can get this glued down. There's my extra there. Now I can see that I'm running into my satin weave here. It's okay. We're pretty close to running into it here too. Our patterns are what's making it distinctive, not our papers overlapping. So I am going to lift this up and get all of those warping threads down. Okay. Okay. And just so this doesn't move, I'm going to go ahead and do this corner like I did the other ones so they don't fall out. Okay. Now this again is called your twill pattern. The one that we did is called the twill 2x2 herringbone. In the class document that you got, I also gave a sample for a 4x4. It is the same concept, but instead of going over and under two at a time, you're going over and under four at a time. It's a little bit more like the satin. It's a slightly more fragile weave because with that going over and floating over so many additional strands, you can pick that up and get it caught and snagged on things. This is one of the most durable weaves that there is. If you happen to be wearing jeans right now, you should take a look down at them. See if you can see in your jeans those little sideways diagonals. Those little sideways diagonals, that is your twill weave pattern. You should be able to see that your fabric there is going in these little diagonals. And if you're able to look really, really close, it's this line that you are probably seeing. You are seeing what those warp threads are doing, and they are going at a diagonal, going up and down. And this is your 3 basic weaving patterns. There is a huge variety that play off of these where you are simply changing the numbers of what you're going over and what you're going under. We will get more into that when we deal further with textiles. You're going to want to go through and make sure that your definitions and what types of fabrics would each of these be made into. And you're going to do that and get that information by reading the article in the assignment called Fabric Weaves 20 Important Types, written by Serena Terrig.